Chapter 6 Grandma Honker et al. The morning mail brought a welcome letter. It was postmarked from a small town back in the woods about 100 miles north of us. The handwriting was large and rough, and our names were misspelled. However, we knew the sender and opened the letter eagerly. Jenny read it out loud. Dear folks, you better go ahead and get up here fast. Grandma Honker's come back and is funnier and bossier than ever. You got to see her play with my two otters, Mike and Ike. They are both she's, but I call them that anyway. Hurry up. Yours, Warden Ollie. Warden Ollie, bless his heart, Jenny exclaimed. How good to hear from him. And Grandma Honker is back, I added. Do you remember her? Do I? She's the largest Canadian goose I ever saw, and the cutest, and the funniest and sauciest. Jenny's recollection came with enthusiasm. Sam, we must drive up there. Just to see our friend Warden Ollie was sufficient inducement to make the drive. He was a man of unusual character, strong, and as ruggedly honest as the pine trees among which he had lived all of his life. His love of nature, and particularly animals, had led him to settle on the shore of a small wilderness lake. He owned a beautiful section of forest land, and he stubbornly refused to sell any portion of it or permit the timber to be cut. Here he had built 6 log cabins, backwoods style, and the renting of these to vacationers was his only source of income. Ordinally had a long name of Scandinavian vintage, but it was too difficult for people to pronounce, so he took the short one by which everyone in the region knew him. He wasn't a game warden, never had been, but his zeal in protecting forest animals had earned him the honorary title. He was a keen and careful observer of animal ways, and naturalists of high scholastic standing respected his conclusions. His age he never told, but we gathered that he had worked in logging camps more than 60 years ago. Yet his posture was upright, his hair and dense crop of whiskers were barely tinted with gray. His stride in the woods was a challenge to the hardiest man. Ordinally was intensely religious, and while he seldom talked about it, his philosophy was reflected in his actions. He lived alone and liked it. Alone? He said once when someone tried to sympathize with him. Why, I'd go ahead and have more friends than you do in the city. I got birds that call on me every morning, and deer that go ahead and follow me like dogs, and a fox that comes to my door. And my friends never talk about me behind my back, nuther. Bet you're due. Jenny and I laughed as we recalled how he used to phrase go ahead, apparently for emphasis, but often in the oddest places. Though Warden Ollie had lived long among rough men, he had never been known to swear. Sometimes, when he wanted to describe something very special, he would lengthen his pet phrase to go ahead and there. Remember when he said that Grandma Honker was the best go ahead and there goose in the north country? I asked, laughing. Yes, and I remember he thought a certain sunset was go ahead and there beautiful. Then Jenny's eyes lightened with anticipation. Do you know what we ought to do? What? Take the X with us. They'd love Warden Ollie, and he'd love them. Maybe Grandma Honker would help Dorothy understand animals. A grand idea. Let's ask him. And pray that Grandma is in a good mood when we go. The X were all for it. We called at their cabin the morning we were on our way toward Ollie's. Briefly, we told them about the old woodsman and his letter. Would they like to go? Would they? The very cabin vibrated with their enthusiasm. In 15 minutes, by the clock, they were ready, and we headed down the highway. "Oh, you're wonderful to take us along," Dorothy exclaimed. "Yes, wonderful," Dick said in his soft voice. "Wonderful," echoed Sonia, charged with excitement. Dorothy, Dick, and Sonia, we called them now, and they called us Jenny and Sam. Last nights were a nuisance among friends. We drove over 100 miles of lovely north country roads, and then turned off the main highway and down the narrow winding lane that led to Warren Ollie's homestead. Ollie was there to greet us. He emerged from the back door of his cabin and walked toward our car with a stride that covered the distance quickly. He looked like a typical lumberjack. Though the day was hot, he wore a wool shirt. The sleeves were rolled up halfway to his elbows. His trousers were supported by bright red suspenders, and the cuffs were rolled well above the ankles, revealing his moccasin-type boots. His hair and whiskers were about as tangled as a hazelbrush thicket, with no two hairs pointing exactly the same way. The ex had been warned about his candor. He had a well-deserved reputation of saying just what came to his mind, regardless of how it sounded to others. As soon as one understood him, his manners were not offensive, but the first experience was often quite a shock. I recalled what he said when I was introduced to him months before. "Howdy," he blurted. "You're just a sawed-off shrimp, ain't you? Don't see how you go ahead and get about the woods with them short legs of yourn. You must go ahead and spend half your time straddling the log." To little Sonia he gave a smile and spread his whiskers all about the compass. "Pleased to meet you, Sonia," he said. "About all I miss around here is a nice young'un like you." "I'm glad to meet you too, Ordinally," she replied. Dorothy Eck didn't fare so well. "Why, all the fine toggery?" he asked, a twinkle in his eye. "Do you think you was going some place? Them duds fit here about like an orange tree would." Dick Eck got a blunt reception. "Eck, eh?" said Warden Ollie, as he shook hands. "Ain't much of a name, but it's easy to say, and I guess you know what it means." "Yes, I answer to it, Warden Ollie," said Dick. "We're grateful for the privilege of coming to your place, and hope we're not intruding." "Nope, nope. Glad you came. Hope you go ahead and come often." Warden Ollie smoothed his rebellious whiskers and pushed his hair back, but whiskers and hair all resumed their formal disheveled positions immediately. "How do you make a living, Eck?" he asked bluntly. "I'm an engineer," Dick said, smiling. "You mean on a railroad?" Warden Ollie motioned as if pulling on a whistle cord. "No, I build things." "Oh, I get it. Well, good for you. That's nice work. You know, I'm sort of that way myself. I built every one of these go ahead in their cabins, and not one of them leaks." "Warden Ollie," Sonia broke in, "where is Grandma Honker?" Warden Ollie's expression changed to a smile that even his whiskers could not hide. "So you've been a hearing about Grandma, hear ye?" he said, turning to walk toward his lake. "Suppose Sam and Jenny have been telling you. Come along, we'll go find Grandma." The cabins Warden Ollie had built were of heavy logs and presented a most sturdy appearance, with no architectural niceties and refinements. Those he rented out were located down the lake shore, reached by a winding path that circled among stumps and trees and over bumpy roots and stones. The cabin in which he lived was larger than the others, The interior was one large room, combination of library, laboratory, museum, and living quarters. Precious little of it was devoted to living quarters. In one corner was a cot on which he slept, a low wood stove for heating and cooking, and a few dishes and supplies. The rest of the room was filled with cabinets, crowded bookshelves, relics of early logging days, files, and a desk on which rested a microscope. Ollie showed us about his cabin with considerable pride. Obviously, he loved his home. From the shelves he took volume after volume inscribed to him by various authors. He had us sign his guest book. "You'll go ahead and be in good company there," he assured us, pointing out names of prominent people from every walk of life who had visited his place. "How clean his cabin is," Dorothy whispered to me on the side. "There isn't a speck of dirt anywhere. You've Have ye seen my goes in it and goes out it?" Ollie asked suddenly. "Your what?" I asked. "My goes in it and goes out it," Ollie repeated. "Here 'tis, back of the stove." He led us to where we could see a hole about a foot square cut in his floor. "That's it," he said with an air of satisfaction. "My animals goes in it, and then they goes out it. Saves me opening the door 100 times a day." "Now, who in the world uses that entrance?" Dorothy asked. "Oh, my fox, my otters, my cat, my rabbit. My bear used to come in, but he got too big. Gone wild now, like he ought to. I never know who'll go ahead and call on me." Dorothy shuddered a little and backed away from the hole, but Ollie didn't notice. "Well, let's go find Grandma," he said, leading the way out his front door. Between his cabin and the lake lies a large grassy area. At the shore were some boats pulled partially out of the water, a pier, and a small log boathouse. He led us toward the lake across his yard, calling constantly, "Hi, Grandma! Come on, ye old honker! Here's someone wants to see ye." Grandma Honker didn't respond at once, though other creatures did. From under the cabin came a large cat named Tom, and with him Nipper, a red fox. They crossed the lawn in a series of scuffles, the cat getting the worst of it. It was Pegleg, a one-legged grackle whose life Ollie had saved 3 years before, and who returned to his homestead each spring. There were Maggie, the pet crow, Pat, the red-headed woodpecker, and Joe the raven. Ollie greeted them all, tossing them tasty bits from a supply of food he always carried in his pocket. "Go on about your business," he grumbled. "I wasn't a calling you. I want Grandma. Where you put her?" He called for the Canadian goose again, but out of the fox came Bigfoot, a huge snowshoe rabbit, and an assortment of chipmunks and squirrels. Sonia was in her glory. She gave her attention to one animal after another, emitting a constant flow of laughter and squeals of delight. "Trouble with these critters is they don't have a lick of sense." Warden Ollie pretended to grumble as he gave Sonia some food to share with the animals. "All the books say a cat is supposed to kill chipmunks and squirrels. And look at old Tom. He just wants to play with them. And that fox, he's just plain dumb. Books say he feeds on birds like old Grandma, but he's just plain crazy about her. He go ahead and follows her around, and sometimes I find them curled up sleeping together. That's the whole trouble. These animals are ignorant. They never go ahead and read any books, so they don't know how to be animals." Warden Ollie straightened up and looked at us with a strange, squinting expression. I had seen him do this before and learned that what he spoke at such moments was true and worth hearing. "You folks go ahead and heard about such things as natural enemies in the forest and instinctive killers. Let me tell you, they ain't no such thing. The cat ain't a killer till he's taught it. Likely not, but his mom. The wolf ain't a hunter till he learns it. It's all about a matter learning, and if they can learn one thing, they can learn another. Look, my animals have learned to get along together, if they try. Grandma, he blurted impatiently, suddenly remembering the task at the moment. Where are you? You're getting more stubborn every day. There she is, cried Sonia delightedly. A huge Canadian goose came walking from behind some brush near the shore. Yep, it's Grandma, said Warden Ollie. But wait a minute, watch this. You can see my two otters sunning themselves on the pier? The two animals were stretched out on their backs, looking like miniature seals, apparently enjoying a lazy nap. Are they Mike and Ike? Asked Dorothy. Yep, you know 'em, don't you? Guess Sam and Jenny got you pretty well informed. Now watch Grandma. She could never let anything go ahead and be that comfortable around here. If she sees 'em, you'll go ahead and see some fun. Grandma Honker saw the two otters all right, as Warden Ollie predicted. She couldn't tolerate such comfort. With her long neck outstretched, she waddled casually, cautiously toward the sleeping Mike and Ike. Then, within reach of them, she settled to the ground and studied the situation. Carefully, she reached forward and touched Mike's leg with her beak. She jerked the leg away, but didn't awaken. He jerked the leg away, but didn't awaken. She did the same to Ike with a like result. Warden Ollie was chuckling softly as he watched. Back under his whiskers, he kept saying in a half whisper, Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead in there. And Grandma went ahead. Suddenly, she gave Mike a savage bite on his tail and quickly gave Ike the same treatment. The two otters, rudely startled out of their sweet dreams, fairly shot up into the air and into the water. Squawk! Went Grandma triumphantly, getting to her feet and waddling down the pier to the shore. The two otters swam about the surface of the lake, snorting and blowing, trying to figure out what had happened to them. All of us were laughing, Warden Ollie the loudest. And folks wonder why I never get lonesome, he said. Something going on here all the time. Grandma has been coming back every year for 8 years. She broke a go ahead in their wing the first time, and I fixed her up. She never forgets. Raised families for 6 years, but not last year nor this. Too go ahead old, I guess. But she thinks she owns this place. She's boss here. Sometimes she's a little rough on people, but I just tell them if they don't like Grandma, they can go away. She pesters the daylights out of Mike and Ike, but they like it. Grandma Honker was now waddling up toward us, looking back in the direction of Mike and Ike occasionally. Warden Ollie went to meet her. She pushed her head up against his hand, and he scratched about in the feathers of her neck. Remember Sam and Jenny, Grandma? Warden Ollie asked. You saw them before. Easy now. Grandma took Jenny's hand in her beak, and Warden Ollie was concerned. A goose can bite mighty hard if it takes a notion, he commented. Easy now, Grandma. Grandma was gentle, but her very demeanor showed she considered herself mistress of the place. She was especially cordial to Sonia. Likes children, Warden Ollie commented. If I had a young'un, I couldn't want a better nurse than Grandma. She's better than a watchdog. Warden Ollie was a keen observer of people as well as of animals. He looked sharply at Dorothy, who was watching Sonia and Grandma with obvious concern. Then, in his usual blunt way, he said, "You don't like animals, do you, lady?" "Well," she answered hesitantly, "I like them, that is, in a way. That is, I'm learning to, I hope. Just so they don't go ahead and get too close, eh?" He laughed. "Well, I don't blame you. Animals is just no good. Looking at this good for nothing goose, someday I'll go ahead in there and tie that neck and her in a bow knot." As he said this, he began handling the big goose in careless roughness. He ruffled the feathers of her neck, cupped his big hands around her neck, and shook it as if to break it off. Then he deliberately turned the big bird over on her back, scratching through her breast feathers and under her wings as if he meant to tear her to bits. Grandma Honker squawked in loud protest, but she just loved it. The moment Ollie stopped, she got to her feet and came begging for more. "See? What did I tell you?" said Ollie, much out of breath. She don't even know she's been abused. Thinks I'm just playing with her. "Come here, you varmint. I'll go ahead and show you I mean it." He went after the delighted old bird like a wrestler, tumbling her about the ground even more roughly than before. Finally, he let Grandma get up on her feet and gave her some bits of food from his pocket. She gobbled them up greedily. Ollie gave us all some corn so we could feed the goose too. Even Dorothy joined the circle and seemed to be getting along well with the apparently docile bird. Then I noticed that Warden Ollie showed some worry. Grandma gently nipped at the bracelet Dorothy was wearing. "Easy now, Grandma," cautioned Warden Ollie, walking over to her. Grandma returned to the food in Dorothy's hand. "Look, Sam," said Dorothy a moment later. "How am I doing?" I looked and found that she was actually petting Grandma with one hand while she was feeding her with the other. She scratched among the feathers of the great bird's neck and stroked her head. "It's taking all the nerve I can muster," Dorothy said. "I'm proud of you, dear," Dick said, and the three X gathered about Grandma, showering affection on her. "I was thinking, you being a builder," Warden Ollie broke in, "would you like to see some pictures showing the way we us build things in old logging camps? I had the first camera in this country, and I took some things nobody else got." Dick was interested, and so were Jenny, Sonia, and I. We followed Warden Ollie to his cabin. Dorothy stayed behind, still feeding Grandma. "I'll join you when Grandma has finished." Warden Ollie looked back at the big goose. "Easy now, Grandma. Remember what I say." Old Lumberjack's collection of pictures was remarkable indeed. The bunkhouses of the lumberjacks, the cook shack, the sleds piled high with logs, the log jams in the rivers. He had them all. Some of the films were overexposed. The prints were badly faded, but still they were fascinating. Then he began reminiscing about his early experiences. "It was tough in them days," he said, "but I wish I could go ahead through them again. No trucks then, no tractors, no good roads. When we went into camp, it was to stay there all winter. We wouldn't see anyone but our own boys till the next spring. That camp was a world all our own, and you made some mighty good friends. Once in a while there was a no good amongst us, but mostly the boys was right. Then when the go ahead in their spring drive was on, When the logs went down the river, I tell ye nobody never saw 'em or go ahead in their excitement. Listen, Jenny broke in. I think I heard a scream. I did too, Dick said anxiously. Something happened to Dorothy. We all rushed to the door. It was Dorothy, all right. She was running in circles, screaming at the top of her voice. A few feet behind her was Grandma Honker, yelling too and beating wildly with her wings. Even as we looked, Dorothy made a frantic dash for the boathouse, ran in, and slammed the door, Grandma ramming hard against it. Inside the boathouse, we could still hear Dorothy screaming. Grandma Honker paced up and down in front of the door like a guardsman, apparently very much annoyed and upset. Warden Ollie was first to reach the scene of battle. Grandma, he scolded, steering the ruffled goose by one side. I'm ashamed of you. I told you to take it easy. She tried to kill me, Dorothy cried as Dick opened the door and brought her out. She went right after my throat, even after I'd been feeding her too. No, she didn't go after your throat, said Warden Ollie, still holding the goose. Grandma hadn't given up her goal, and she was pecking around his legs, looking for an opportunity to get at Dorothy again. But she did. She reached right up and took a bite at me. I barely escaped. She wasn't after your throat, Warden Ollie said confidently. It was your necklace. Grandma has a go-ahead weakness for jewelry. She loves it. I saw her eyeing it when you fed her. Here, will this satisfy you, Grandma? He took from his pocket a string of sparkling cheap beads and held them out to the excited goose. Immediately, she snatched the beads in her beak, and with a little honk of satisfaction, she ran awkwardly away. A short distance off, she dropped them on the ground, looked at them carefully, turned them over several times, and picked them up and carried them on. See, that's what she wanted, Warden Ollie said triumphantly. She just like all women, just likes something to splurge with. Wasn't fair for you to have all them jewels you're wearing and her none. She wasn't mad at you. She just wanted you to divide up. We didn't see much more of Grandma that day. She was too much occupied with her necklace. She went walking back into the woods, carrying her treasure and jabbering about it in goose language. Later, we saw her swimming far out in the lake. Even as we watched, she took flight, looking like a plane as she circled high overhead. Finally, it was time for us to start home. Sonia was reluctant to leave, as we all were. You'll come again, won't you? Asked Wally as we walked toward the car. Grandma will be nicer to you next time, now that you're acquainted. And maybe you won't go ahead and get so fancied up, he said to Dorothy. It's best not to tempt Grandma. I'll dress in sackcloth, Dorothy assured him, and I'll bring my little Sonia here. And bring my little Sonia here, demanded Ollie, placing his arm about the child. This young'un is mighty good with the animals. Tell you what I'll do, he said mysteriously. If you come back, I'll go ahead and show you my big secret, something I never showed another soul. Will ye? We promised to go ahead in there and come back, and that right soon. Grandma came sailing in just as we left, making a three-point landing near the pier, and bade us farewell with a squawk.